welcome to the next episode of the Investing in Nashville show. And I will say this, I have not been more excited to sit down with today with Ryan Stackhouse. He's a longtime friend. I actually knew him long ago being in real estate. He was once in the mortgage business, and while he was in the mortgage business, he was building up his real estate portfolio, and eventually he grew it to the point where now he is out of the mortgage business altogether, and now he gets to travel and just buy and sell real estate, especially in the commercial space, but we'll get into that. And again, the thing about Ryan is, and what I loved about this conversation, is we really dive deep into really the why of he's in it, why he got into real estate, why it's important to him, and really what the next moves. And it's because it's a lot of, the numbers are important, but you really need to figure out what drives you, right? You got to really figure out, like, why am I here and what am I doing? So we had a really deep conversation. I think this is by far our longest podcast recorded. So without further ado, enjoy the episode.
Cheers.
Anyway, cheers, man. Yeah. So
Did I
tell you this? I don't even know. So I grew up in defeated Tennessee. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's got welcome on both sides of the sign kind of place. Yeah. So yeah, you know what I mean? Because that's just middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But we had a bluegrass. Bluegrass was my whole life. Growing up.
Yeah.
And until I moved to Mount Juliet. But yeah. So how'd you get into bluegrass?
So it's kind of a funny story.
I guess there's bluegrass in Indiana.
Yeah, there is. But I wasn't really raised with bluegrass. I was raised with old country. I was raised listening to Hank and Merle and Willie and, old stuff. And then 90s country, too, because my childhood was 80s and 90s. So it was a lot of, like, Brooks and Dunn and Alan Jackson and stuff like that. But when I got through college, I learned to play guitar at 10. And when I got through college, I studied jazz in college. And jazz and bluegrass aren't so different.
Really?
On the surface, they sound completely different. But as far as structure goes, there's a melody. There's a song. There's a melody. When you solo, you play the melody, you quote the melody with the instrument, and then you improvise. So it's very similar to jazz in the form and function in how you execute.
Really?
So in that way, I started listening to. Like the transition was like I started listening to Grateful Dog. It was David Grisman and Jerry Garcia.
Yep.
And they were doing like this, folky bluegrass stuff. And that's what turned me on to bluegrass, actually. David Grisman is the one that kind of got me into it. And Jerry Garcia, listening to Jerry Garcia's acoustic stuff. And then I went down the rabbit hole. Like, I started listening to all the 60s and 70s bluegrass. And then it took me to Bill Monroe. And it took me to all the traditional stuff. And so when I was about 20...
That's too funny.
Yeah. In a very, very circuitous, roundabout way,
I
came to bluegrass. But I was an appreciator of old country anyway, so it wasn't hard for me to grab onto it and go, this stuff's cool, Yeah. Because then I started listening to, like, old string band music, old, like, hill country, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi string music, and that stuff, like, I love that stuff, man.
So did you come here for music?
No, I actually came here because I met this beautiful redhead.
Really? I did not know that.
She was the siren call that brought me down here. I had a brother living here, and I was coming down here and visiting him.
Troy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
now, is it just you and Troy?
Just me and Troy,
Just
yeah.
you and Troy.
Yep. And I was hanging out with him and, coming down like every other weekend. And eventually, we're about, after he'd moved here, it was about a year and a half into that. And I'd come down like maybe once a month, once every couple months. It was Indianapolis, so it was 4 hours. It wasn't
not too
terribly far, yeah. So I came down one weekend for the Super Bowl, 2011. And he was like, hey, man, come down for the Super Bowl. I'm hosting it. We're doing it at Buffalo Billiards downtown, so it should be fun. We got a good group of people. And he invited her and her two friends. And one of her friends was dating my brother's best friend.
Really?
And I didn't know that they lived together, and it was like this whole, lady clique. But I avoided them the whole night. Like I was intimidated by them. It was her, this blonde, and this brunette, and they were all drop dead beautiful.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's too much. I was like, that's intimidating. I walked up to her brunette friend, and she shut me down quickly. She was like, if you're trying to hit on us, like, no thanks. Now we're friends, but back then she was like, homie, don't play that.
So you eventually like pestered Angie until she.
So yeah, she came up at the end of the night and she was like, hey, tomorrow's my birthday. Tonight we're going to the beer cellar down the street. Do you guys want to come along? And I was like, I can count on one hand how many times a girl has asked me to go somewhere. So yeah.
That's too funny.
I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth and, say no to that. So yeah, awesome. We ended up going there and we ended up talking until like 2 a.m. My brother was the DD that night. He drove us home, dropped her off. I get out of the car to like give her a kiss and she's like, nope, not on the first date. And you're not even remotely coming in. You're going home. Really? It's like, okay, she's a lady. All right.
That's too funny.
Yeah.
That's too funny.
We started texting and calling, and I eventually 6 months later moved here.
Two kids later.
2 kids later.
So so now your kids are, you said 4 and 2.
4 and 2.
4 and 2.
Yep. 2. The brick shit house is 2.5. the tall, skinny one. He's 4 and a few months, and honestly, we've raised them on the road. We've raised them traveling.
Yeah. So how? Okay, when we met, you were still in mortgages.
Yep.
You still had your own team.
Yep.
With mortgages.
Yep.
So where did this? And it's funny because I think it's hard to have an actual conversation around real estate investing.
Sure.
Like
it is,
without your name actually coming up, right? Like,
really?
Dude, it's like getting into it. Everyone's like, yeah, Ryan? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, of course I know Ryan. So like what? Because I think
that humbles me, man.
It really, I'm serious, and it is true, and that's why I've really been excited about this. Because I think a lot of people look at what you're doing, they look at the traveling and all this, and they're like, he's doing it. He is making. So where did the traveling come in?
So, what really sparked all this? I'm starting to piece together, putting a book together, writing a book, and I started thinking about this when I started the book because I wanted to talk about like what brought up this desire to travel. In the mortgage business, when I was setting all this up, I saw a vision for how this business could go, how the mortgage business could go. And I knew that with laptops and technology, you could potentially work from anywhere. Now you have to have the referral partners solidified. You got to go deep with people in order to continue getting the business if you're traveling. But parallel to the mortgage business, as I started the mortgage business, when I was 25, I started buying rentals. And I started seeing the passive, semi-passive. Nothing's ever passive. Right. I'm a firm believer that any investment is never fully passive. And if you take your foot off the gas pedal and stop looking at it, then it becomes a disaster. Yeah. So nothing's passive in my opinion, but as close to passive as we can get, right? And I'll go into like where we're at now, like with stabilized assets, and they're getting pretty passive. But I started buying those rentals when I was 25. A buddy of mine, he and I'll kind of digress a little bit. My parents took us traveling when we were little. So really? we grew up skiing out west in Colorado and Montana. Like my parents weren't loaded by any means. It was like ski trips with the school. We go out there, or we had family friends out there, and they worked for the ski resort, so we get lift tickets for discounted price. But I grew up doing that. I grew up doing family trips, out west or down in Florida or whatever. And then we had exchange students when I was young. We had a Japanese exchange student, then we had a Danish exchange student. And our Danish exchange student, we ended up staying very close with. Really? And he's like a brother to my brother and I. And my parents have gone over to Denmark several times. When he started having kids, they were over there, meeting his kids and being there for them. And then over the years,
Was the exchange student same age, like you and Troy's age?
He's 5 years older than me.
Okay.
So he's a little further along, with the kids and the marriage and all that stuff. But he waited till kind of late in life to have kids too. So his kids aren't super old. They're not even teenagers yet. So it's still fun. We can get our kids together and still play together well. So that sparked my interest. Going to Denmark, going to Germany, flying into Germany, and then traveling the U.S. It lit a spark within me that I didn't know was going to come up later on, right? So my 20s, I'm in the mortgage business. I found myself single at 28, 29 years old.
Now, was this in Indiana?
Indianapolis.
So you did mortgages prior to coming to Nashville?
Yep. Okay. I started when I was 22 in the mortgage business, and started with a broker, then Countrywide, then Bank of America, Huntington Bank, did all these big banks, and then eventually when we met, I started doing my own thing, and that's where cool stuff happened for me. But I was 28, 29, living with my buddy that I'd grown up with, one of the guys I'm going to see when I go up to Indy, known him my whole life. And, I started talking to him. I was like, let's go get scuba certified.
Oh, man. Dude, you're speaking my language right now.
Yeah. I was like, let's do it, man. What do we have to lose, And he was like, all right, well, where do you want to go? And I was like, I've done some research. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but Honduras.
Really?
Yeah. He was like, Honduras? Really? And I found this island off Honduras that did scuba diving certification for like $350, and they put you up for that time as well. Like they give you a place to stay.
Because I think if I'm not mistaken, you say Honduras. I believe you said my brother has been to Honduras a few different times, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe he's done scuba diving over there.
Yeah, probably.
He's been begging me to get my license, and this year I've decided this is it.
Yeah,
I'm making it happen. I'm making it happen.
It's so worth it. Utila is the island that we were on. Roatan is another big one that's kind of a little more touristy. Utila is more of like a backpacker island. Still super cool. So we stayed for almost 3 weeks in Honduras. It was like 2.5 weeks or something like that. We flew into San Pedro Sula, traveled up in the mountains, went and saw a bunch of Mayan ruins, and went up and met a bunch of indigenous, descendants of Mayans, and then came back down, explored the valley, went out to the coast, took a ferry out to Utila, hung out there, and that backpacking, boots on the ground, dirtbag existence of travel really appealed to my soul.
Yeah.
It made me get real interactive with people, to get on the buses, you're sitting with locals on the buses, to kind of travel around. You had to speak Spanish, and I took Spanish through high school and a little bit in college, and was much more fluent in my younger years. Now I've still got some of it, but it's fading unless I use it, like anything, right? So you were forced to immerse yourself, eat the food, speak the language, learn, the culture, and that really appealed to my soul, So then fast forward to, a few years ago, we started investing in multifamily apartments, and I started seeing this vision, I started mapping out this vision. We had all this residential portfolio of real estate, single family, duplexes, quadplexes, but they weren't, traditionally I thought, okay, I'll pay these off one day, and that'll be my retirement, and then I'll go do what we want to do. And my bucket list had always involved a lot of travel. I still have a bucket list. I still continue it, and I check it off as I do it, and then stuff gets added as we travel. As you travel, you find more places you want to go,
man. Yeah, 100%. I miss it.
Yeah.
I miss it.
Yeah. Do it,
dude. So when I was 19, so I started off. I went to Mexico. I only was there for a week, but I got connected with who's now a longtime friend of mine.
Yeah.
She lives in Cambodia full time now.
Oh, nice.
But she was like, "Hey, you've got to come to India."
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm living in India for 3 months.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, yeah. So I lived
Wow.
in India for 3 months.
Oh,
when
I didn't know
19. And dude, like, you're right. You go there, the culture, like literally, we're Well, we had an apartment that we kind of rented out.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're there. We was spending times like in some of the orphanages, like literally sleeping with the kids in their bunk at the
that's
orphanage,
amazing.
living there, and then
Yeah.
I will say that was the time of my life that just shifted, right?
Yeah.
Like, it gets in your blood.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I ever did, this is a true story. The hardest thing I ever did was come back from India.
Yep.
Because it just changes your soul. Like,
It does.
dude, like when you get in there and you experience it, like I'm the same way in that, like, when the next summer we spent some time in Swaziland, Africa.
Oh, nice.
Literally living
Yeah.
in a tent,
Yep.
in a mud hut part of the time, and a tent the other part of the time, like
Yeah.
waking up with the goats coming out. Like,
Yeah.
dude, there's nothing more calming.
Yeah.
There's nothing more, I don't even know the word.
Well,
that just touches your soul, like
Yeah.
like being out there like that.
Absolutely.
you know?
And with those experiences, I'm always brought back to the States, and I'm always like, man, we are so lucky.
Mm-hmm.
The life that we get to live here in the U.S., just the resources we have, the opportunities we have, the things we were born into, right?
Yep.
We are so blessed. There's a lot of people in the world that struggle, but at the same time, like, the beauty that I get from that is like, these people, as I've traveled, some of these people have nothing, but they will give you everything.
Oh yeah.
They have the
100.
gift.
They can be some of the most giving.
Yeah.
People.
And to me, that's wealth. That's true wealth. When you have your family unit, and you've got love, and you've got your, that depth of family relationship, and you've got, a lot of these people, like, they live in amazingly beautiful places that they've grown up in, and they're stewards of that land. I mean, that, to me, that's rich.
That's huge.
I feel like, a lot of my life I've chased this freedom, and it's like that old analogy of the Mexican fisherman. It's like, this guy goes out and fishes and plays his guitar at night, and I think it's a Kenny Chesney song.
Yeah, no,
He talks about, like, he goes fishing, he plays guitar at night, goes home to his wife and kisses her, and he's like, I've worked my whole life to get the life that you have, and this guy makes nothing, but he's happy and he's fulfilled. And I think a lot of us, we seek this life that we could have. We just have to make a choice to do it. And for me, I had to create this security so I could take care of these guys in order for me to take that leap of faith. But I truly believe that anybody can do this. It's just a matter of, like, where are you at in your life? Where you sure, you have to be responsible and you have to take care of your family, but I don't think you need to be in a place where you can officially, like, quit your job in order to take a sabbatical and go travel with your family. I think it's important to do that stuff, because you wouldn't know you wouldn't know what that's about unless you go and do it.
Well, okay, let me ask you this, and this has always fascinated me, because I and I see this really in a lot of aspects of life, but especially in regards to, like, investing.
Yep.
Like, why do you think? Because I mean, we talk about this. We've talked about it before, like mindset.
Sure.
Like, why is it that more people don't get into that, right? Like, why is it that? Because you see people that'll go to the conferences, they'll pay for the classes, they'll do all of this.
Sure.
And I've been there.
Yeah. Sure.
But they just can't bring themselves to take action, to pull the trigger. Why do you? What's your thoughts on that? Your theory on that?
I think a huge part is mindset, but a huge part, I think, is people feel they come back to their life. They come from the conference where they're all pumped up and they're surrounded by like-minded people. They come back to their life where they're surrounded by people that have lesser dreams and lesser goals, and they get sucked right back into being, and I hate to use the word average, because I don't judge anyone, and I don't care what anybody does. I just think that, for me, I had to up my goals and up my dreams in order for me to play at that level, right? You can't think like, that, okay, next week I can't feed my family if you're going to achieve financial freedom, right?
Yeah.
So I had to change the people that influenced me. It didn't mean I changed my friends. I still had my same friends. I just added friends that thought on a whole different level that scared the crap out of me. You know, when I talked to them, I'd be like, oh,
Yeah.
you know, but that was good for me because
Yeah.
what it did is it pushed me to go, you know, start making new connections that it's like that, what is it called? The reticular activation system in your brain. You know, when you're shopping for a car, you start seeing that car everywhere. When
Yes.
you're creating your future and you're creating your destiny,
Yes.
all of a sudden your brain starts figuring out these puzzle pieces to make it happen.
I'm a huge believer in that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go, yeah.
You start like your psychological part of your brain, the dream,
Almost like a filter.
it's like your dream part of your brain, you know.
Yeah.
Your subconscious, that's the word I was thinking
Yeah.
of. Your subconscious brain starts putting this stuff into action and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you like stuff starts happening and you're like, whoa. And I'm also a believer, you know. I believe that God has a play in our lives too.
Yeah.
And, you know, I believe that there's always, I don't feel like fate is really at play. I feel like everything's got a purpose. You know, there's too many people we've met and I've been like, yeah, I know what that was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I've always, and I, you know, I even was talking about that for the video. The same thing. You think about a Jeep. Next thing you know, Jeeps are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, and the reality is it's not like opportunities are not around us.
Sure.
Like we have. To me, I'm a firm believer. We have to train our brain.
Yep.
To recognize, like, this is what I want. This is where we're going, and you're, because we have millions of data points hitting our brain every single day, right?
Yeah.
Like, it filters out. We have to decide, like, this is what's important to me.
Yep.
And then from there, your brain says, okay, and I'm going to let those things in. I'm going to let it go. And I mean, do you think is fear a big part of it?
Yes. Yeah. So to kind of circle back, I really do think that fear is a big part of it. I think too, you know, I think most people just need a coach or they need somebody that's holding them accountable.
Yeah.
You know, I know I needed that. I needed somebody that, you know, when I came back and talked to them, they wouldn't buy my bullshit.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
they would call me on my bullshit and say, dude, if this is what you want, you owe it to your family and to yourself to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I've had coaches that were like, if you don't do that activity, or you're not letting yourself down, you're letting your family down. You know what I mean? And that's not to say that like I'm a firm believer that my kids would rather have me present with them than them to inherit 10 or 15 million dollars.
Yeah.
They don't care about that if they don't know me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that my time is everything. And that's my why, like crystal clear on my why. And that's another thing. I think fear is a big part of it. I think a lot of people don't have a clear enough why as to why they want to, you know, your job may be terrible and it may be sucking your soul.
Right.
I'm not speaking about you, but I'm talking about like the 9-to-5ers out there. It may be sucking your soul, but you don't know what's next. You don't know what you want to go to. So I think you really got to do some introspection to really understand, like, what is it that I really want to do? What would make me feel alive? Because a lot of times it's not quitting a job. It's finding what you want to do, as opposed to, I still work. I still find deals. I still close on deals.
Yeah.
We're good. We could stop working and be fine, and we'd be okay. Financially, we'd be okay. I would be miserable.
Right.
I would lose my purpose. I wouldn't be challenged. I wouldn't grow as a person. So I think it's finding that thing. And for me, that thing is real estate, and I love to play music. And real estate's an avenue that gives me the time to play music and spend time with my family and get to see beautiful places. I think as long as you have, you know, that job or that income source that, you know, provides the ability to do the things that you like to do, or if that job is that thing that you love to do, then you can feel fulfilled. And you know, real estate is just a channel. It's just an avenue for me. But yeah, to circle back, and I know I'm rambling a little bit.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome.
But I think, yeah, a lot of the mindset, and you know, the mindset thing goes along with fear.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of times when we think about, I don't know about you, but when I thought about in my 20s, I started buying houses, and I thought about like closing on a $3 million commercial building, that seemed completely unattainable. You know, it seemed like I'm here, and Europe is there, and I
Right.
can't swim there.
Yeah.
You know. So
and going back to what you're talking about too, like surrounding yourself with people that are going to push you, that are going to, I mean, it just change the way you look at the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know, one of the reasons why we're doing this and we're launching is because, you know, I want to be that. Like,
Sure.
that's where I'm going, you know.
Sure.
And it's funny, I was doing a podcast with Tyler
Yeah.
Cobble the other day.
I love
and
that
we
dude.
get done,
Yeah.
we're walking out, and I said, you know, we're just chatting afterwards, and I said, yeah, I'm at 1,000 doors. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And like, he's like, 1,000 doors. he's like, bro, I got a buddy who's doing it for 6 years. He's got 1,000 doors. So you need 10,000 doors. I'm like, dude, anybody that's busting my balls
Yeah.
because I say I want 1,000 doors,
Yeah.
and they're saying I'm not thinking big enough. Like. I'm moving in the right direction. Like that is.
I saw your post on Facebook.
Did you?
about
Yeah.
that.
Like
I was like,
to me, that is huge. Like, are you? I think it's about being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, by the time this comes out, like very few people know about this, but I'm shutting down my company.
oh really?
Yeah, and I'm moving to Compass.
Really?
You know, but yeah, and so by the time this comes out, everybody it's gonna be a big thing. But like,
Congrats.
you know, to me it was a soul moment, and me stopping and saying like, what is it that I really want?
Yep.
Like, you know, to me, like I built this and I poured a lot of time, a lot of sweat, a lot of money
Yeah,
into this
sure.
because I thought like this is gonna bring me the freedom, and then I realized, hey, this is not getting me where I want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is not taking me that direction. In fact, it's hindering me.
Yep.
Like, am I going to let my ego stop me from doing what I know is the right answer?
Yeah.
Because like the part's like, oh, well, I built this, right? And so I'm like, I've decided like this is it. I'm shutting it down. I'm closing it. I'm taking a cup. I'm taking a name. I'm taking one more, and with me. And because like, hey, I want to build a life of freedom. I don't want to build something that is going to keep me behind the desk all day.
And you have clarity. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through. I respect that, dude, because I went through the same thing. You know, I'd built this whole branch. I'd built this whole team, and you know, good money was coming in.
Yeah.
And for to walk away from that, people said I was crazy. You know, I'd close friends and family members that were like, "What are you doing?" You know, and for me, it wasn't I'd gotten so past what the money was about that it was more about like, so here's the analogy I use. All right. Let's say I work, let's say I cut my hours down to 30 hours a week and I make $1 million in a year, W-2'd, right? Yeah. Okay. It's great living, right? Like we could argue that's the top 1% in the country, right?
100%.
So that'd be great. So $1 million W-2'd, your tax rate is going to be astronomically high. So you're probably going to take home 60% of that, right?
Yep.
After Social Security, benefits, all that kind of stuff. You got to insure your family and all that stuff. So 60%, $600,000 you take home. You got life expenses. You got your mortgage, all that stuff. And some would argue that when your income goes up, your lifestyle inflation goes up. You spend more. Let's pretend I don't, though. Yeah. Let's pretend I live on what we live on now, which is about $100,000 a year. No matter what we've made, we've always kept it at about $100,000 a year.
Yeah.
Because savings and why and the goals. So let's say we have $500,000 left over to invest, right? Let's say we leverage that $500,000. We go buy a commercial property and it's $2 million. We put 20% down, right? Leveraging it as much as we can to stabilize asset. Okay. Let's say we do that. So I put $500,000 in. We've got a $2 million asset. Compare that to what I'm doing now, which is full time in real estate, finding deals with partners, with cohorts that I have by myself as well. I'm purely focused on this stuff, and we did $11 million in deals this year.
Wow.
And I created for my family about $750,000 worth of equity in these deals just by closing that deal.
Right.
Because they were value add deals, and the day we closed on them, they were worth more than what we paid for them.
Yeah.
I would have had to have made more than $1 million in the year
Just to do that.
grinding just to create that. So which one has a better use of time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I look at that and I go, I could grind my face off and not be focused on this world, or I could be in this world, focused on it full time, doing what I love to do at the same time, traveling the world. I'm with my kids and with my family. I got a stronger marriage than I've had in our whole marriage. it's not without challenge because we're with each other all the time. I mean, I think I tell a lot of people that, and they're like, I couldn't do that. And I'm like, then why are you married? Why are you know? For us, there was no question. It was like, oh, you know, we're going to have to face some hard stuff. Okay, we're up for it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's made me grow as a parent. It's made me grow as a husband. It's made me grow as a person. I've had to do a lot of self-reflection because when I wake up in the morning, I like to feel like there's a purpose every day. And some days I don't have a lot on my agenda. So I'm like, all right, what can I do today to help somebody else? Or what can I do to like make her life easier or be more present with my kids or, you know?
And I think, you know, my wife and I have went, you know, we've talked about it a lot, but, you know, we went through that last couple years of really like grinding and really processing a lot of things with us. And again, I think that what we can learn in real estate investing is it's the same, like life is life. Yeah. Right. And I think we have to come to a point where we're okay with fear. We're okay with being uncomfortable. Right. Like our first decade of our marriage was tough because we weren't willing to have the uncomfortable conversations. Sure. Right. Yep. And I think that as we kind of went through, we just said, hey, this is it. We're going to go into this space.
We have to.
We have to. And we kind of, you know, took a lot of things head on. Like, was definitely one of the most difficult times of our life and especially our marriage, but we came through in a completely different place. And to me, we're in a better place literally than when we first got married. You
Absolutely.
know, and it, to
I
me,
can see it.
Yeah.
You exude growth because you know, you're doing the hard work. You're doing things like this. You've lost 46 pounds, is it?
Yeah, 46, yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. Dude, you deserve all the congratulations.
Well, thank you.
You're doing the work. You're doing the hard work.
And I mean, I think putting yourself in uncomfortable places, right, eventually makes life more comfortable.
It does.
You know, in the end.
Yeah, expands your comfort zone. And you know, courage is facing your fear and staying, like an analogy, standing on stage, feeling the fear. We all have it. We get on stage talking to somebody or in the limelight. We all have fear. It's peeing your pants and staying there anyway. That's courage.
In front of everybody.
In front of everyone.
This is what it is, you know? And I mean, again, I to me, like, I know we're this by the time come out, it don't matter. But, you know, we're going to be announcing this thing, and we're trying to do this whole vlog and have been for a few months now of like, we're going to live our journey out in the open.
I love it.
You know, because I think that's
brave.
To me, like, I'm just as guilty, if not more. I would say more guilty than most people of like trying to portray something that you're not. Yeah. Right?
Sure.
And that flows into every aspect of life. Sure. And when you just kind of live this place of like, this is it. This is who I am.
This is honesty.
This is where we're going. It brings a level of freedom, whether, you know, to your life. Yep. That you can just say, this is it. You know, if there's a failure, it's my failure. Sure. It's not your failure. It doesn't matter what you think. It's just mine. Yeah. And I think that it brings a lot of freedom, and it causes you to be able to make decisions based on who you are as a person, not who you're trying to portray in front of a bunch of people. Yeah,
or who people think you are or think you need to be.
Yes.
That's something over the last 7 months. I've had a lot of like personal healing that's come from, you know, in my business. I felt like I was trying to please people all the time, and I was trying to be something I wasn't too. You know, when I stepped away from that and I said, you know, I know that the right people are going to love me and accept me for who I am, and the wrong people will criticize me and will shoot me down, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. I love them both. And I will continue loving them both. And I love my enemies just in that difficulty as well. Yeah. Even though I don't want to, I still love them. Yeah. And I know that it's not me. It's the work that they need to do, you know? Yeah. And, man, I'm with you 100%. I lean in anymore. I lean into the hard stuff. Yeah. And I think the beauty of this has been a lifelong journey of building this, you know? I knew that first trip, you know, with my parents to Denmark, and I knew, you know, when I went to Honduras, I knew at that moment in time, especially Honduras, I had absolute clarity. This is the direction I want my life to go in. Yeah, and really, like, it's evolving, like this past 7 months there's been a lot of, traveling to see friends and family and stuff like that. But I have an altruistic heart. So what I really want to happen and what I want this to grow into is us helping others along the way, not just us traveling selfishly to like see beautiful places. I want this to be more altruistic. So my kids can also understand that, hey, we're very blessed and we're in a really, really good place. We need to help other people,
One of the things that has always stuck out to me and fascinated me about you, and from the very, very beginning, before you even got into this, I say before you got in, before we talked about investing a lot, is the generosity. Like literally, you're sitting in Mexico, and I text you, and you're willing to jump on a call. Like, and so talk to me about that for a minute. Like where does that come from, and why do you think that is important? If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer, man. If we all lived like Jesus lived, this would be an incredible world to live in, And if it, for people out there that aren't religious, I think it comes down to like, who's the kind person that's your role model, If we all were like Gandhi, or we all were like, name the person that put other people before themselves. And I'm no saint. Don't get me wrong. Like I do things for our family and for us as as a motive. But as I grow and as I become older, I'm understanding that true happiness for me is giving to others. That's where I get true happiness. That's where my heart gets like swelled up and I feel just amazing. And the well that comes from is, man, I've been blessed to have an amazing father and mother. My dad is such a giving person. And my mom too. But I was raised watching my dad. Like, we'd go to church and these old ladies would come up to my dad and say, Kevin, my roof is leaking. I can make you, I don't have the money, but I can make you a pecan pie. My dad would be like, I'll be right over. I'll fix it. I'll make sure it's taken care of. These are old ladies that lost their husband. They don't have much, But my dad had it in his heart to make sure they were taken care of, That's the way I was raised. My grandfather was the same way. He would do anything for you. And, when you have that as an example, and I surround myself with people that push me to do more in that arena, when I have friends that are like volunteering and going to Africa in missions for 3 months, I get humbled and I'm like, man, what am I doing? Like I look at that and go, I have the time and I have the resources, so I got to make that happen, At the same time, like I also want to pour into my boys, and I don't want them to feel like I'm,
giving out to others and then they're
and
left
neglecting
with the
them.
scraps.
Yeah,
for sure.
So there's a balance there to be had, but at the same time, like I find that thinking big in the investing world is a huge part of who I am and surrounding myself with those people, but also thinking big in the generosity world and surrounding myself with people that have giant hearts and people that inspire me. Lots of my friends are not in the investing world, but they're amazing people. They're meditators, they're yogis, they're people that are very balanced and very good parents. Those people inspire me too, because that's a different all of this is balance, right? Financial, spiritual, relationship, all those things we have to balance every single day. Every day when we wake up, we have choices that we can make to impact our friends, our spouse, our kids, our the rest of our family, everyone. And I think that we make choices every day to balance all that stuff, and it's how we react every day that really defines who we are on a daily basis. I think that's the hardest part of life. Honestly, that's the hardest part to me, is like striking a balance and all that stuff. Because there's a lot of things I love to do, and it'll get unweighted, or I'll play music all day, and my wife will be like, "Hey, you want to hang out with us?" I've noticed
that too. Like I've noticed, and it's one of the reasons that has led me to end up killing my company. is I find myself stressed all the time and disconnected, even when I'm at home, and I'm like, this is not the life that I want to live. Like, this is not leading me to be in a better father and a better husband.
Sure.
And
you know what's amazing about that? You don't portray that. Like, I watch your videos all the time. When you post them, I watch them because you inspire me.
That.
And when I watch that stuff, you don't look stressed out. You don't, and that just goes to show that we can, on social media, we can look one way, but have something else going on completely different behind the scenes. And
it's important too. I mean, it's important because, like you said, it's easy for us to look at someone, and whether someone we admire, someone we trust, and we see one thing and we think, oh, they got it all figured out.
Yeah.
And that's not always. Maybe they do.
No.
Maybe they have it all figured out. But I think more times than not, it's just not. At least it's not the full picture, right?
No, and this is something Angie and I talk about a lot. Our life. We get a lot of people that reach out to us. They're like, "You're living the dream life," and I'm like, "Okay, let's step back," because the reality is, what we're doing is we're picking up life and we're just moving it around.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
It's still raising kids. We're in 300 square feet together.
Right.
So it gets very intimate very quickly. And if you get in an argument, you got to work that shit out quick, or else
you ain't going anywhere.
It is not pretty.
You ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, you're not going anywhere. And if you just continue to let it boil, like, you're at each other constantly. We've come back to this house, and like, it's easier here for us to like be a little more distant. We just talked about that this morning. We're like, we need to reconnect because we've been traveling, we've been going to see friends and hanging out with with all these different people, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, this isn't like the RV where we're together all the time.
Right.
Here we're and it's so easy to do. Like, we come back to our life that we created here, and we propagated this life for years and years and years. And don't get me wrong, it's a great life, and I'm very blessed. I feel very blessed to have the amount of friends that we have, people that care about us, that reach out to us. I feel blessed to have that. But it's at some points it's like, we're too busy.
Yeah.
We come back here and we're too busy, and like, now we're going to go back to Ohio where we don't know anybody and other than her family, and it's going to be like, we'll reconnect.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not saying we want to run away from the busyness, but at the same time, like, we have to be very intentional about how we connect, how we spend our time together. So,
okay, shifting gears for a minute. I mean, you've been doing this for 15 years, right? Mm-hmm. And it feels like over the last few years, you've been a good investor. We've talked about this. Like, you were able to do things on your own and your own deal. Like, but it feels like you've kind of been able to shift a little bit, right? In a lot of ways. Like, in your mind, like, what separates a good investor from a great investor? Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
For you, what was that shift, and what was that either mindset shift or just shift in general that separates those who do it and a really great investor?
Sure. And I won't call myself a really great investor.
I know you are. You're too humble for that. I'm going. That's what I'm here for.
Well,
no, either way.
What I truly think was the catalyst for me, the rocket fuel, so to speak, is I had to learn the things that I didn't know. I didn't know how to go out and put together a syndication to raise money. I didn't know how to do that, so I needed that skill set. I hired a mentor to teach me how to do that, and to teach me how to put together the legal team, to make sure I'm compliant with the SEC, to make sure that I'm doing my investors a service and I'm protecting myself at the same time, make sure our family assets are protected. So learning what I didn't know was a big part of it, but another part was getting real with myself and knowing where my weaknesses lied. In business, I learned through the mortgage business, I learned that I needed to surround myself with people that were good at the stuff that I was not good at. I'm really good at meeting people and connecting with people and, getting out and inspiring people and, being vulnerable with them to connect with them. What I'm not good at is the minutia. When there's stuff coming in and there's lots of little details, I can overlook those details because they overwhelm me and they stress me out. Right. I tend to be like, I'm going to push those aside for a little bit, So I needed to surround myself with those people. For me to take it to the next level last year, to really, really supercharge our passive income and, to be able to take down a lot of commercial deals, I had to get real with myself and surround myself with partners or teammates that would make up for my weaknesses. Yeah. And my weaknesses were finding really good deals. I found some good deals, but I've got partners that are really good at finding deals. So I partner with them, and I'm okay with giving them ownership percentages because
they're giving you access to better deals, right?
They're giving me access to better deals, but also, would you rather, a mentor of mine taught me this, would you rather have half the watermelon or the whole grape? Right?
Yeah.
Would you rather share the wealth with somebody else and have something or nothing?
No, I agree. I totally agree. I used to say kind of the same thing. Like, would you rather have 80% of a $100 bill or all of a 50?
There you go.
I mean, at the end of the day, you are further along. So talk to me about that. Like, what process did you start putting in place to start building out that team? Because I think that is a huge hurdle. I think it's been a hurdle for me, if I'm honest, and I think it's a hurdle for a lot of people. Like, where do I even start to start building out that team?
Yep. So I found it really helpful to go to masterminds and to go to places where lots of people that either are like me and thinking like me are at, or can I meet people that are at where I want to be at so I can learn from them, Because a big part of my journey is I found people that were ahead of me, and I constantly find people that are ahead of me to study them, to learn what they're doing. And now I'm at a place where I'm like, a lot of my heroes and a lot of the mentors that I have, like, I love what they're doing and they've created something that they love, but it's not what I love.
Right.
They've created the income to create the freedom. And now that I've gotten there, now I'm like pushing beyond that. How can I grow as a human? How can I do this stuff and grow, buying good investments and doing that stuff, but how can I grow as a human being? And I think in a nutshell, if I back up a little bit, finding like-minded groups, going to masterminds, finding seminars that speak to me, networking with those people at those. A lot of the people that have become my partners I met through those events, through those seminars, or through those masterminds, And then also creating a center of influence. I had that multifamily meetup here in Nashville. We did it for 3 years, 2.5 years, I think, prior to me leaving to travel, and it's still going. The other guy I started with kept it going.
Is this the Evan or no?
No, Josh Cooper.
Okay.
The multifamily meetup.
All right.
I know Evan though.
Do you? He's coming on.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, he's a good
guy. So that created like a synergy of people that wanted to do the same things, and I became an influencer within that group. I hate that word influencer right now with social media because there's a stigma with it. Right. And people are like, oh, this millennial influencer, whatever.
But at the end of the day, at its core, that's really what it is.
Yeah. And ultimately it became like, I brought in speakers. So, for me, if I'm going to bring people together, I want there to be a lot of value. Right. Like, it's not just me like harping about, the last thing I want to do is sit down and talk about what I've done, because I feel like what I've got to offer, sure, it may inspire some people, but there's so much more value that I can bring in by bringing in other people that are on my team or people that I know that are doing rock star stuff as well. Yeah. There's only so much I can give. And so that really created a synergistic community. And through that, I've met partners. I've met, lots of people that I've done business with. So, as far as overcoming hurdles, creating a community, plugging into the community, meeting the people that are like-minded, that are going to push you, meeting the people that are ahead of you. Yeah. And, now I'm looking at, the next level for me is like 10 million plus assets, buying a building. In one asset, one building. Yeah. We put one under contract and we failed. We failed at raising the money, Really? And that was like 2 months ago. And fail is not, it's not really in my vocabulary. We learned a lesson. Right. We learned a valuable lesson that, we need to spend a little more time soft raising the money before we jump into another 10 million plus asset. We're really good in the $2 to $4 million space. And, again, I'm not like minimizing that, because you asked me 5 years ago, $2 to $4 million assets were a big deal to me,
Right.
you know, and
Yeah.
still are a big deal. I mean, that's still a good sized deal. But now I'm looking at 10 to 15, $20 million assets, and I'm like, okay, that's where we need to be.
Right.
But it's a whole lot more organization of investors and organization of, you know, putting together financing and, you know, all that
Right.
stuff. There's a lot to that,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think, and to me, like, is that kind of where, because I feel like you've been really good at connecting with people, like, you know, like you talk about, you put a deal together, even if it's a $2 to $4 million deal, you know, you've got banks to be connecting with, you've got brokers that are bringing in the deals. You
Yep.
know? So is this networking strategy, is that how you come about developing those contacts and those relationships?
Man, a lot of it is just really, truly organic.
Yeah.
You know, and I use an example. Yesterday, I met with a buddy of mine who I was in Colorado, and we were camped outside Rocky Mountain National Park. And a buddy of mine, he brought me a deal, and we partnered on it down in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. It's an industrial office. Here's the cool thing about real estate. It gets me excited.
Yeah.
It gives me tingles. It makes me like butterflies in the stomach, because I get so stoked about this. This deal, it's like a 8.5%, 9% cap rate deal, which,
Wow.
you know, it's decent.
Yeah.
But it's not super sexy. You know,
Right.
we've got a hotel that's returning 18% returns.
Right.
You know, so sometimes like perspective is everything, right?
Right.
But what's important to me is cash on cash. How's my money working for me, right? And if it's not my own money, how's it working for my investor? So my buddy brought me this deal, and he was like, hey, I've loosely got the terms negotiated, but, you know, I know you can pin this down and, you know, be a little more direct with this guy. Take it over. Let's see what we can do. So we negotiated seller financing. Seller financed the entire industrial office building. The place is making $10,650 a month. Our expenses are minimal. We pay taxes and insurance. The tenants pay everything else. They take care of the lawn, the maintenance, everything else. And seller finance with 10% down at 6% on a 30-year note. So we have a balloon payment in 5 years once we kind of raise rents and stabilize, and then we can refinance. But we're putting 10% down on a we paid $1,072,000. So we're putting 10% down, which is unheard of. You
Right.
can't go to a bank and get 10% down.
Right.
Our cash
Yeah.
on cash for our
So
investor.
you did the 10% down through the seller finance?
Through the seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
We gave him 10%. We have an investor who's a partner with us.
Right.
And, you know, by doing 10% down, my other partner that brought me the deal, we retained 44% ownership, almost 45% ownership in the asset. We gave our investor the other 10%. He put 10% in. He gets 10%
Right.
ownership. He gets a preferred return on his money. We all win, but we got a deal that got super creative. We retained a lot of ownership
Yeah,
in it,
that's awesome.
and we were able to, you know, pick up this asset for. And the point of my story that I was getting at, and I got down a rabbit hole, but I called this broker in Muscle Shoals and I said, hey man, I'd love to get your opinion on the value of this building. I called him while I was in Colorado, and this is just, you know, proof that you can really network anywhere. It's just a matter of like picking up the phone and calling people, you know. I called up this guy, his name's Matthew Golly, and I called him up and I was like, hey man, I looked up, I got a recommendation from my buddy to call you because I heard that you're a good broker down here, and you do some commercial, you do some residential, everything in between, and you know a lot of people. And he goes, really? How'd you get my name? And I was like, Google, recommendations from other brokers.
Yeah.
He's like, really? Okay. So we started talking, and he drove up yesterday to meet with me. We met for
Here?
lunch. Yeah, in
Really?
Nashville. And we sat down and talked, and he's got a deal on the table right now that we're looking at, and it's all through literally just hopping on the phone. You know, there was no barrier there for
Yeah.
me. I was like, I'm picking up the phone. I need his expertise to find out what this asset is worth, because if we're going to pick it up, yeah, this all sounds sexy that it's seller financing and all that, but it's got to be worth
Right.
money in order for us to buy it, and it's got to be a good investment. So he reassured me. He was like, yeah, you're getting a good deal. You know, in 3 or 4 years with the development that's happening down here in Muscle Shoals, you'll make money. But I built I've now built a lifelong friend. This guy's a
That's
really,
awesome.
really good guy. And he's bringing deals to us now because we built trust and sat down face to face, belly to belly, and built trust. And so it's been a lot of that. It's just been a lot of organic. Just I have no fear of judgment or no fear of like. If people don't like me, that's fine,
Right.
But I like to think I'm a pretty likable guy. I try to be nice to people and kind to them and look out for their interests too. And that's really helped me to develop these friendships that have turned into lots of partnerships and lots of opportunity.
Yeah. To me, that's fascinating. I mean, because I think there's so many times I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for other people. This kind of magical formula of like you do this and you touch this many people and you'll kind of build this network.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's things like this of sitting down and having conversations and building relationships and I think that is one of the big hurdles that I'm trying to overcome. And I mean it's why I'm pushing myself to get in front of people and DM people on Instagram and be like, hey, let's grab coffee. I'd love to pick your brain a little bit. You know? There's that fear that like, what if they reject you? What if they say no? And at the end of the day, who cares? At the end of but you've got to get to that point to say.
Well, and I think for me, it was a mental shift. When I was in these coaching groups for the mortgage world, I was part of the core. I was part of the mortgage marketing animals, and I had all these coaches that were like, here's the thing, Ryan. It's a numbers game. The more people you talk to, the more relationships you're going to build. And eventually, what clicked in my brain was there's going to be a certain number of people that it's like this weird rule. There's going to be 70% of people that don't care, that don't want to align with you, but there's 30% that will hear you out, and then probably like 15% that will jump on board and lock arms with you, right? Yeah. So I knew that if I called 100 people, I'd get 15 that would listen to me and we could lock arms and do something, right?
Right.
And maybe 5 of those would actually work out, right?
Right.
So eventually, I came to this realization that, when I go into a meeting, not everyone that I meet with is going to be a great fit, and that's okay. That's completely okay. So I go into phone calls now or go into meetings and I go, I don't really care what kind of response I get. It doesn't really matter what kind of response I get. I don't care if they say yes, no. I don't care if we build a bond. What I'm looking for is kind of data or response, because I know that if I get this many no's or this many like negative responses, I'll get this many yeses. So I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to think of that person any differently. I'm just going to go, that's a number.
Yep.
And don't get me wrong, like I think of people as people. When I connect with somebody, I connect with them deeply. Like I become really good friends with people. I feel like you and we could not talk for 6 months and get together and boom, we'll pick up right where we left off. And I think you're a great guy. I respect the hell out of you. I think you're amazing. You got a good heart and a good soul. And I feel like there's people in my life where I can meet them and be like, I know within my gut that this is going to be a friendship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's other people where I'm like, I tried hard to connect with them and nothing.
It just doesn't work. So where did you? Okay, I'm fascinated too. I mean, and maybe that comes back to this mentorship. But there's a quote that I think about a lot: is the last competitive advantage is creativity. I botched the quote, but I mean that's pretty much it. So I think it's fascinating being able to sit down and you structure a deal, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really unlimited. I mean, it's really unlimited by your creativity, how creative you're willing to be.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing that I'm learning is I'm talking to more and more people. It's like, hey, we did seller financing for this and this, and we had a 70-30 here, and then after 3 years, it swapped from a 30, vice versa.
Yep.
And there's really no limit. So where do you learn that? Like, to me, where do you learn the creativity piece, and like how do you structure a deal? How do you underwrite a deal?
Yep.
Where does somebody start if they want to learn like underwriting a deal?
I kind of took from a lot of people. I can't point my finger to one person, but this guy Marco Kozlowski was a big mentor of mine. I went to Brad Sumrock seminars. I learned a lot about underwriting multifamily through them.
Right.
Jake and Gino, they have a meetup. I think once a quarter, and they're mostly multifamily. But the cool thing about Jake and Gino is like they're really good guys. You can go up and talk to them after they speak, and they'll come out into the audience or come to the back of the when you're in the hallway outside the convention center. You can go up and talk to them. And the cool thing about them is they invite other people that think totally different than multifamily. Like they had a guy that was speaking at their last event that was talking about ATMs. He invested in ATMs. They have like 5,000 ATMs around the country.
Really?
I love when there's like this, and I love bigger pockets for that, because people are just throwing out ideas and they talk about them. I love that, and the creativity piece.
Right.
You have to be willing to think differently than everyone else in order to find the deals, find the opportunities. And I think there's so many people on with blinders that go, this
is it.
Yeah, I need an 8 cap, and I need it to be cash flowing this, and it needs to be this, and there's so much more to real estate investing than that. At first, when I got into commercial, it was multifamily. I was going to focus just on that. But then I met these partners who were like, listen, there's really cool stuff happening in the triple net lease world.
Right.
You can get the tenants to pay taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, all this stuff, and there's still opportunity for value add. The value add's in the vacancy, or it's in the lower than market rent per square foot that they're paying. You can bump the rents when their lease is up, right?
And I think in going through that flexibility, like I see, take out of the investing just the real estate world, I've seen so many deals die because of a $300 home warranty.
Yeah.
And you stop and you think, like, what are you doing? Like, you're losing on a $15,000 check because of a $300 home warranty.
Yeah.
And it really, like, you step back and you say, well, how do we approach this from a new angle, right?
I think a lot of that comes down to you have to detach yourself from the emotion of real estate, and you have to take emotion completely out of it. You've got to look at every transaction as a business transaction and go, what are my upsides? What are my downsides? Where's my risk? And where's my opportunity? And if you take all the emotion out of it, don't get me wrong, like when you move into a house, you're going to have emotion. You're going to think about, I'm raising my family here. I'm living life here. I think about that with this house sometimes, but I'm still, even with this house, I'm fairly emotionally detached to it because we're traveling right now. This place has to make money, and it has to pay for itself. I'm that cheap.
It
has to pay for itself. I can afford this mortgage, but do I want to? No. And the thing for me is, like, it's a deal. It's another deal in my head. If I sell this house and I take this equity and I hold on to it, if we come back to Nashville in 2 years after we're traveling and rebuy, we're going to pay $150,000 more. I would rather rent this out on Airbnb and pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to fix whatever we need fixed here than have to rebuy and pay $150,000 more for another house that's the same house. So I look at this like it's another deal. Instead of selling it and putting the money somewhere else, I'm looking at it like, no, let's just hold it.
So to date, what's been your favorite deal that you put together 15 years in? What's your favorite deal?
Oh man, it's the deal that we refied this year.
Really?
Okay. So
take me back.
Okay, so can I do
no,
two?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
Yeah, this is your time, man.
Okay,
do two deals. Yeah.
So all right. So the one right now that really is really cool, and then I'll talk about the one that I'm in right now. So I haven't closed on it yet, but it's really, really cool as well. Okay, so the first commercial deal I ever did, and I got so lucky. And I recognize
on your first time
commercial deal. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I've done plenty of residential deals and development deals where I've broke even, or development one that we wrapped up that I paid $30,000 into, just to get them sold. So I've learned hard lessons. Most deals we've made money. The development deals, I've learned that that's not my space. It's just not. It's not what I'm passionate about, and it's more something that I need to leave to the people that are really good contractor engineer types. That think in terms of, that's development's their lifeblood.
Right.
It's just not mine. So, and that's okay. So. First deal, 25 unit apartment complex in Clarksville, Tennessee. and probably everybody's going to go up to Clarksville now after I say this. And go, we need to buy apartments in Clarksville. It's still a good market, and I think there's still opportunity up there. So if somebody finds deals up there, more power to them. We bought this thing for $589, 25 units for $589. It's unheard of right now.
Man.
I found
25 units.
25 units. We found a bank that would lend us $160,000 for renovation because we needed to renovate the entire inside, outside of these units. They're like 1980s decor. Wow. So they gave us $160,000. We ended up putting about $220,000 into it. So we cash flowed the other $60,000 from the rents. And it took us about 18, 24 months to get there, to get it completely stabilized.
From purchasing it to renovating the whole 9 yards. And did you have to, during that time, did you just not renew leases and fix them up? Is that
exactly
what it was?
it. Yep.
Okay.
When leases would come up, we'd do the renovation. It'd take about a month to get it done, and then re-lease it out and give them a special to move in, and and bump the rents. So when we bought it, the rents were an average of like $380 a month. Yeah, we bumped them up to $580. Really? So $200 per unit times 25. That's
which is almost twice. I mean, when you're looking at those numbers, you're talking about a 75% jump. Yep.
And the really, really cool thing about all this is commercial property is based on the income that you receive. It's not based on comps like residential.
Right.
So you're operating a business, and it's valued on how you run a business, which is, I think, super cool. You know, if you like running a business, you can be really good at this stuff.
Right.
You know, and more importantly, if you hire the right team, you can be really good at it. You know, I'm not so good at like, doing everything myself. I'm really good at finding talent and hiring them.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to know that when somebody's good at something, I can recognize it.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So we got it stabilized after 2 years, and during that time, Clarksville had kind of hit a boom. You know, it had from 2017 to 2019, it had reached a higher kind of value, and everybody up there was buying stuff. So, investors from Nashville were going up there because it's still cheap. You know? So what that had done, it compressed cap rates in the market. So we went ahead, and I was talking to some lenders, and I talked to this commercial lender, and we ended up pursuing a Fannie Mae non-recourse 30-year fixed loan, which means that I'm not personally guaranteeing that loan. The asset is. Yeah. But the beauty of it is that asset appraised for $1.4 million. We owed less than $800,000 on it. I put 25% down on the $589, so I was in the deal about $140,000. Right. And the bank.
You got in at $100. So you bought it at $5.
Yep, $589.
$589. You put $220 in it, so you got.
Yeah, and $160 that was from the bank.
Right.
I put in $145 in the deal, so loan was $145 minus $589.
Yeah.
So $440, call it, and they gave me $160, so we were at whatever $600 or so, roughly, and then we cash flowed the other $60. It appraised for 1.4. We pulled out $450,000 cash, tax free.
Wow.
Cash out refis are the best thing in the world.
Really? So you can pull that out with no tax.
Yeah. Cash out refis are not a taxable event. And that's the most beautiful thing that they ever created in the
I did not, for whatever reason, I've never realized that.
There you go. If you get that and a bunch of people out there get that, then that's...
So you can you can pull that money back out, no tax.
Correct.
Done.
Yep, correct.
Put it in your pocket.
And here's what's even cooler about that, right? I nerd out about this stuff. Taxes, all that stuff. I've started going down that rabbit hole now because as we acquire more, I want to find tax strategies, right? So you can do a cash out refi and go sell that asset 3 months later, and you don't pay any capital gains on all that money you pulled out, and you got a little bit. Let's take a case study. Okay. Let's say you owed $600,000 and I went and sold that asset for $1.4 million.
Okay.
I pay capital gains on $800,000 minus realtor fees, right? If I did a cash out refi, pulled out that cash, went and sold it, and I sold it, and there was 20% equity or 25% equity in the deal. So I made like another 250,000. I pay taxes on the 250,000, not the 800,000.
Really?
Yeah.
So you almost want to pull all that cash out and then sell it.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
How did I not know this?
I don't know. Now you do.
Dude. That is incredible,
Isn't it cool?
man.
And that's the power,
That is incredible.
Commercial real estate for me now is just this big BRRRR strategy. I do the BRRRR strategy with all the commercial deals that we do. We just scaled it. You know, we just scaled it.
You just did it with more zeros on the end.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. All right. So that was your first one.
That was the first one. So this one that we're doing now, this is, 3 years later, roughly. We're at a point now where we've sold some residential stuff, and we sold our 44 unit that we owned in Hartsville. We've owned for 2 years. We made money on it. We're in a good place with it. But more importantly, we sold a bunch of residential as we're kind of consolidating and making our life easier.
Right.
And we're taking stuff. One thing that I do regularly is I analyze how much equity we have in our deals that we own.
Yep.
And is that equity working really well for us? Like, for instance, if we own an asset that has 200,000 in equity in it and it's worth 400,000, but it's only making us $500 a month, that 200,000 in equity could work a lot harder for me. So I should sell it 1031 exchange and buy something else, right? So I do that regularly.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We sold 6 assets, and here's what's really cool. I was traveling and in Mexico the whole time. I closed on all these deals remotely.
Really?
I was sitting in Mexico looking at the ocean on November 7th, and I had 3 deals close, and we made $300,000 on those.
Awesome.
The other ones made.
That is awesome.
The other 3 we sold, made another $200,000.
And then so you're 1031 that have you already identified and all that?
Yep, we identified. We've got about $500,000 sitting in a 1031 right now from the sale of those assets. Again, did them while I was in Mexico, while I was traveling. If anybody believes you can't do that, you can do it. You totally can do it. You just need the right team. And what we've got under contract right now is by the time this airs, I don't know, January.
Yeah, it'll be like January. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll be close to closing or already closed on it. It's down in Chattanooga. It's a triple net lease building. AT&T is the tenant. They've been there 32 years. They just signed a 5-year lease. They pay $158,000 in rent. But more importantly, I found debt servicing through my friend Tyler. At 3.6%, 25-year amortization. So it cash flows after we're paying the mortgage. Debt right now is so cheap that it makes our cash flow that much more attractive. So we're going to cash flow about $74,000 a year in income. So the cool thing is, we're at this point now in our lives where I've sacrificed and I've put aside for a long time buying these assets that were unsexy back in the day, sat on them, they appreciated, we renovated, we took care of them, but they were sitting there with equity, sold them, put them into a pool, and went and bought this stabilized asset that I don't have to do landscaping. I don't have to do any of the maintenance on the property. It's the closest to mailbox money that I can possibly get. And this is what I was talking about earlier.
Offloading 6 properties in the
to
process.
have one.
Yeah, to have one that you don't have to touch.
Yeah. That makes it super easy for me. And Tyler will manage it, and it becomes as passive as possible. As you can get in this world. So outside of investing in notes, that's about as passive as you can get. So that's where we're headed. We're kind of we're buying assets that create wealth, and then with that wealth, we'll buy the other stabilized asset that gives us as close to mailbox money as possible, so we can hedge our bets and also diversify enough so we're my family's taken care of. I know that we've got, good income coming in, but then we can take chances on the new stuff to build more of that to allocate towards that. And then eventually that becomes like, we're getting to a place where we're like, okay, we've got what we need. Maybe another year, we've got way more than what we need. So what do we do now? What do we build now? Do I coach people? Do I teach, one-on-one with a couple students how to do this? Or do we go to India or Africa, and do we build a mission or build an orphanage or do something like I want to do something like that. That's where I'm at in my journey, where I want to scale it up and step it up to do something really cool for others.
And what's fascinating too is you because of what this opportunity real estate's given you, you are now you're able to create a greater impact. I mean, and it's not to say that you can't create impact without financially. You can create an impact,
absolutely.
voluntary anywhere. I've
sure.
said that for a long time, but I mean, there's a lot of great things you can do in the world when you have a deeper pocket than you did when you were broke.
Sure.
And to me, that's a fact. Like for us, we're really big, and I think part of it came from living in Africa, and for me living in India. But like, people that are caught in the sex trade and things like that. Mm-hmm. To me, that's a huge, just a huge driver for me, and that's our long-term vision of being able to support that. And
I love that. Yeah, I was raised in a family. My grandma, my grandma's been this like guiding light for me for a lot of my life, all my life.
Yeah.
And very spiritual woman, and she really had nothing. She was born with not a lot, and she was, for her entire life, she worked a very humble job and, created a future for her kids, raised her kids, and, has always been this like stalwart of, just being an incredible person and being giving and very spiritual, and always talking to me about Jesus, and, always kind of bringing me back to center. Right. And she never had money. So I always knew that I could be a really good person without money, And I think what money does is it amplifies who we are. Mm-hmm. If we're an asshole, we're going to become more of an asshole. Right. If we're a good person, it just amplifies the good stuff within us, right? Because what it does is it allows us to make a lot of choices that we wouldn't otherwise make. Yeah. And if we're leaning towards the asshole side, we become very narcissistic and become, very involved in ourselves and what better, feeding ourselves. If we're, altruistic, we figure out ways to impact others, And I think that's always going to be something to balance, Right. Okay, it's easy to go out and eat good food and travel and do all these things that are, very, centered around what's best for us. But then do we feel fulfilled wholly doing that? It's fun for a while, but it's not fulfilling. Yeah. I found from 7 months of having absolute freedom and travel and, unplugging from a lot of things that, it's really cool. I really enjoy it. But is it fulfilling deeply?
Right.
No, it's not. So now it's, now the journey, it's
moving, transitioning into that new space.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So is there, going back, I mean, so it's kind of we're kind of tying up, wrapping up. I mean, is there anything for somebody getting into it that you would say, hey, should say they don't even know, do I want to go to multifamily? Do I want to go into commercial? What would your advice to them look like?
So if I were to talk to the 22-year-old version of myself.
No beard. Yeah. Pre-beard. Haired. Yeah. So if you were talking to that Ryan.
Yeah.
What do you think you would say?
I think I would say take action even when it's imperfect. Don't be afraid of taking action. Start where you are. Don't start where... Comparison is the robber of joy. Right. Comparison is the thief of happiness, Don't compare yourself to someone that's 15 years ahead of you. Don't compare yourself to someone that's 5 years ahead of you. Right. Compare yourself to someone that's on the same journey as you. Right. And more importantly, compare yourself to yourself. Where were you yesterday? And where are you going tomorrow? Yeah. Take action, learn, read, educate yourself, listen to podcasts. Those are the things that really changed me. Finding mentors, going to seminars, spending money on education and mentoring for myself. The education that I paid for myself, investing in myself, was the best money I ever spent. Yeah. Because, I probably spent, I don't know, $250,000 on education over a 3 to 5 year period. But those things made me so many more multiples than that, that I can't even quantify. Yeah. If somebody said, was it worth it? Right. I mean, how do you even answer that? I'm living my dream life now. Like, how do you even answer, is 200, whatever amount of money it is? Right. It could be $5. Is that worth the money? Absolutely, because I learned stuff that I didn't know before, and I learned a way of life that I would have never known. You know?
That's good. So, all right, so I know your time's valuable. You're gonna be right. So, if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way? What's the best way to get?
So to reach out to me, I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook. You can email me, rlstackhouse1979@gmail.com. I hesitate giving out my phone number.
You don't have to do that.
But email, Facebook,
DM on Instagram. Yeah. You don't do Instagram?
Yeah,
what?
I'm lacking. I'm lacking
man.
there. I have a profile. I just haven't used it in like 3 or 4 years.
Funny.
She's Mother Stack,
really?
MUTHASTACK, and you can always follow her. And our journeys are documentable that way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then I post everything on Facebook too. So I need to get on Instagram and just cross post between the two, but I just haven't done it yet. So.
Well, Ryan, it has been a pleasure.
Likewise.
Cheers.
Appreciate
my
you,
friend.
man. Yeah.